Some people claim the United States is more divided today than at any point since the Civil War. I don't know if that's actually true or if it's just the media coverage of events that makes it seem that way. In this video series entitled The Division Stones, I'm going to discuss why our country seems to be so divided, and in particular, what companies and organizations are contributing to, and in some cases, benefiting from, the division in our country. In some instances, that benefit is actual monetary profit. In other instances, that benefit may take the form of organizations advancing an agenda by dividing us and keeping us fighting, or at least suspicious of each other, rather than paying attention to what's going on around us. This video breaks into 3 segments, and I have listed them here, so if you want, you can skip ahead to the portion you're most interested in. Those 3 segments are: just how divided are we, the division stone metaphor, and the real mind stone. It is extremely difficult to measure something as abstract as political division. We could count the number of protests that occur each year, or the lives lost and the dollar value of property damage from those protests, but that is not a good measure of political division because there are so many factors that can influence whether a peaceful protest might turn violent. Perhaps a better measure, but still far from perfect, is to look at election results. In the 2022 midterm elections, 23 states elected a Republican trifecta, meaning the state has a Republican House, Senate, and governor's office. 15 states elected a Democrat trifecta, and only 12 states elected a divided government where power is split between the 2 major parties. Another measure of polarization might be to look at the number of states who just elected supermajorities in their legislature, meaning the legislature has a veto-proof majority. The 2022 election saw Republicans gain, or in some cases even increase, their supermajorities in states such as Florida, West Virginia, and Kentucky. In other words, red states became redder and blue states became bluer, and the states in general became more polarized. Why does this matter? One reason is that it tears at the fabric that holds our country together. In 2018, California became the first sanctuary state when a law took effect that prohibited state and local law enforcement from cooperating with U.S. immigration authorities. Over the next couple of years, several other blue state legislatures voted to refuse cooperation with enforcing federal immigration laws. Now we are seeing red states pass laws to prohibit state and local law enforcement from cooperating with the enforcement of federal gun laws. And the division between the states gets bigger. Yet another place we can see evidence of political polarization is in the confirmation of Supreme Court justices. If we look at the margin of confirmation votes for the past 20 successful Supreme Court nominees, we see a clear downward trend since 1993 when President Clinton's nominee, Ruth Bader Ginsburg, was confirmed by a 96-3 margin. In fact, from Justice Burger in 1969 through Justice Roberts in 2005, the average confirmation vote was 90% in favor of confirmation. However, from Justice Alito in 2006 through Justice Brown Jackson in 2022, the average confirmation vote was just 57% in favor of confirmation. This would seem to support the idea that the Senate confirmation process has become much more political over the past 16 years. But the big question is why? The United States has essentially had a 2-party system since the 1860s. Why in the past 10 to 20 years has America become so divided? When I began thinking about companies who actually make money selling outrage and contributing to division in our country, a number of companies came to mind. I knew talking about all of them in one video would mean creating an hour-long video that few people would want to watch, so I was going to have to break the concept into multiple shorter videos. That left me with the challenge of how to group those companies and organizations in a way that made sense. I then realized there was a striking parallel between the division in our country, where our country is about to be split in 2, and the storyline in the Marvel Cinematic Universe with Thanos, when Thanos used his Infinity Gauntlet to kill half of the life in the universe. For anyone not familiar with that story, Thanos was a character who thought overpopulation was a threat to the universe, so he decided to fix it. He set out on a quest to find the 6 Infinity Stones. These are incredibly powerful stones, and each stone had the ability to control some aspect of the universe. One stone controlled time, another stone controlled space, and yet another stone controlled reality itself. Once he obtained all 6 Infinity Stones, he put them into a specially made Infinity Gauntlet. This gauntlet housed all 6 stones, and then literally with a snap of his fingers, he was able to destroy half of all life in the universe. The living beings that died simply turned to dust and blew away. Infinity is a mathematical concept just like division is. So I decided to name this series the Division Stones. I have grouped the companies and organizations that benefit by selling division by their characteristics in what they attempt to control as it relates to the 6 Infinity Stones from the Marvel Cinematic Universe. One of the 6 stones in the Marvel Cinematic Universe was a yellow stone known as the Mind Stone, which had the power to control people's minds. I believe the Mind Stone is a great metaphor for many cable news programs. Fox News, CNN, MSNBC, while their political spin differs, they all have several things in common. Most of the popular shows on every channel exist by telling their audiences what they want to hear. Would you like to see an example?
Donald Trump's done. He's done. There's no question about that. He's done.
Breaking news.
A bombshell.
Today is a turning point. Today was historically bad for President Trump.
Today was a turning point.
A turning point. We're at a turning point here.
The beginning of the end for the Trump presidency.
The beginning of the end.
And breaking news.
We have another bombshell.
Mike Pence might have to assume the office of the presidency.
Trump will resign.
Trump is going to resign.
Is this the tipping point? I know we've said it over and over.
You think this is a tipping point?
And over and over.
This is a tipping point.
And over and over.
The walls are closing in.
The wall's closing in.
The wall's closing in.
That montage goes on for 3 full minutes. But I think you get the point. Yes, President Trump was impeached by the House in December of 2019 and again in January 2021, but neither impeachment resulted in his removal from office, in spite of literally years of CNN and MSNBC anchors and their guests repeatedly predicting his imminent removal from office. And if anyone thinks Fox News is any better, I hate to break this to you, but they aren't. Sean Hannity and his guests spent years telling his audience that any day now Hillary Clinton is going to be indicted for a whole host of offenses. She wasn't. That U.S. Attorney John Durham's investigation was about to blow wide open and it will shock the conscience of the nation. It didn't. That a James Comey bombshell would land him in jail possibly as early as Christmas of 2019. It didn't. That Andrew McCabe was likely to face charges. He didn't. That Peter Strzok was going to be held in contempt of Congress. Well, he was threatened, but it never actually happened. So Fox News does exactly what MSNBC and CNN does. They and their guests tell their audiences what they want to hear. But it goes a little deeper than that. This is Sean Hannity's website, and while I'm not a fan of Peter Strzok, these photos of him with a smirk on his face were intentionally chosen to portray him in as bad a light as possible, which is the exact same thing that MSNBC does with stills of President Trump. They intentionally choose photos and paint verbal pictures to provoke their viewers and keep them coming back. Cable news channels are also guilty of wearing out the breaking news or news alert banners. They constantly try to keep their audiences watching all evening long by promising, quote, the latest developments and, quote, expert analysis from their guest. This keeps their audiences glued to their TV sets, listening to essentially the same story with the same spin for hours at a time, reinforcing that their spin must be true because they've heard it so many times. And while I'm talking about expert analysis and expert commentary on cable news shows, let's take a closer look at just who some of these people are. The Intercept published a great article on August 19, 2021, about how so many military experts who show up on cable news networks are on the payroll of defense contractors. From former Secretary of State Condoleezza Rice and former Secretary of State Leon Panetta to senators, congressmen, and retired generals, many cable news experts have undisclosed conflicts of interest when they go on television to make their case about why America should engage in conflicts around the world that would financially benefit their current employers. As different as the political spin is between Fox News and MSNBC, their age and economic demographics of their viewers are virtually identical. But, as you would expect, the political demographics of their viewers are polar opposites. If you got something out of this video, I would appreciate it if you would leave a like, and if you want to see my next video in this series, be sure to subscribe and turn on notifications. A recurring theme on my videos is to choose wisely. I sincerely encourage you to limit your exposure to cable news. Not everything is breaking news, and you can waste a lot of time hearing essentially the same couple of stories over and over again. Also, strive to get your information from multiple sources rather than picking one that confirms what you already know or suspect. This is a small but important way of depolarizing yourself, and if enough people do this, we can begin the process of depolarizing our country. And finally, be careful about trusting any expert who appears on TV to push an agenda, because they often have undisclosed conflicts of interest. Thanks for watching, and remember, choose wisely.